You know that comparison you hear all the time for the attack on the US Capitol? What if it's completely wrong? We're about to dive into a powerful argument that reframes that entire day by tracing the ideas that led to one of the most dramatic moments in American democracy.
So, January 6th, 2021, a huge crowd gathers in Washington, D.C., and this was the feeling in the air. People really believed they were kicking off a new American Revolution. But the question is, was it really a new 1776, or was it something else entirely? And that's where the argument we're examining today comes in. It offers up a totally different parallel. It asks us to stop and think, were the events of that day less like 1776, the birth of a nation, and maybe a lot more like 1861, the beginning of a civil war fought over who really gets to be in charge? To really get that comparison, we have to look at what actually went down on January 6th, as it's all laid out in the source material. Okay, so the facts here are pretty jarring. You've got over 2,000 people breaching the Capitol. Their stated goal? To stop the official count of the presidential election votes. You had chants of "Hang Mike Pence" echoing in the halls. And for the very first time in American history, a Confederate battle flag was carried through the Capitol, a symbol that's directly, and I mean directly, tied to that 1861 insurrection.
Right, so this brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How on earth did a rally that was supposed to save democracy end with an attack on one of its most sacred processes? Well, to find the answer, this analysis says we have to go back, way back.
Believe it or not, to understand what happened in 2021, we actually have to rewind all the way to the 1980s. This is where the analysis starts to trace the roots of a political idea that really set the stage for everything that came later.
So the argument starts here, with this big political push against the federal government, specifically a government that regulates business or provides a social safety net. And as the middle class started to feel the squeeze, a new story began to take hold, one that blamed their struggles on minorities and on women in the workforce. This grew into claims of massive voter fraud, especially after laws made it easier for people to register. And pretty soon, this idea that a group of real Americans had to reclaim their country got locked in.
And this idea, which had been bubbling under the surface for a long time, really exploded into the open during the Trump presidency. This, the analysis argues, is when challenges to democratic norms became much more direct and happened a lot more often.
One of the key moments this analysis points to is a phone call in July of 2019, where President Trump asked the president of Ukraine to investigate a political rival. The argument is that this wasn't just a phone call. It was an attempt to use the power of the presidency to sway an election while also holding back military aid that Congress had already approved. That second part could be a violation of the Impoundment Control Act. And the politics behind all this? Well, that's pretty eye-opening. Even with these serious accusations on the table, the support in Congress stayed solid. This quote from then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is presented as a prime example. The argument is that the real priority wasn't the president's actions, but just the raw political power that came with controlling the Senate. So after the impeachment acquittal, things just started moving incredibly fast. This analysis lays out a really clear escalating timeline. It starts with a strategy, discussed before the election, to just declare victory no matter what the vote said. Then you get the victory declaration on election night while votes are still being counted. Then comes direct pressure on state officials in Georgia to literally find more votes. And it all leads right here, to the Stop the Steal rally. Now, while all this political pressure was building, you have to remember what was happening in the courts, and it was not going well for them. The campaign and its supporters filed over 60 lawsuits to challenge the election results. The vast majority of them were thrown out, mostly because there just wasn't any evidence. Okay, so with the legal challenges hitting a brick wall, a totally different strategy starts to take shape. The source material breaks down this scheme, where supporters in 7 key states put together these fake, alternate slates of electors. The whole point was to create total chaos on January 6th so that Vice President Pence could then either throw out the real votes or kick the whole decision over to the House of Representatives, where the weird voting rules would have all but guaranteed a Trump win. All right, this is where things get really interesting. The analysis now fast forwards into the future to a hypothetical 2026 to show what's really on the line here. It's a way of imagining a future that could be shaped by all the legal and political fallout from January 6th. And in this imagined future, presented by Heather Cox Richardson, everything hinges on a single Supreme Court decision. The scenario is this. In 2024, the court rules that a president has absolute immunity from criminal charges for any official acts they take while in office.
So what happens next? Well, according to this scenario, the consequences are huge. A re-elected president, now untouchable by the law, basically acts without any checks. In this future, Congress's power over spending gets ignored, federal troops get sent into cities, subpoenas are just defied, and the whole justice system gets turned against political opponents.
So when you boil it all down, this whole analysis puts us at a massive crossroads. It's really a choice between two completely different visions for what America is and what it's supposed to be.
You can see one of those visions spelled out right here by former White House official Stephen Miller. It's this worldview that says strength, force, and power are the only things that really count. It's kind of like saying forget a system based on rules, the only thing that matters is winning and dominating.
And the analysis from Heather Cox Richardson argues that this view is, well, it's a total rejection of the entire American system. The whole point of checks and balances was to contain and control power, to make sure it serves everybody, not just a powerful few. And then you have the other vision, the complete opposite, really. And it's captured perfectly by Abraham Lincoln speaking in 1863, another time the country was in deep crisis. It's a government that's not based on the strength of a few, but on the consent and the participation of everyone. So that's where this leaves us. Two totally different ideas about what this country is, about power itself. The analysis just lays it out there and leaves us with a question. Which path gets chosen?